everybody. How are you doing? Yay. So, hi there. I'm Christina Rice. I'm the Senior Librarian of the library's photo collection.
And I am Madeline Peña, Director of Engagement and Learning. And we are the co-chairs of the Central 100 Year-Round Planning Committee. We hope that you've been enjoying our birthday bash so far.
Yes, thank you. And at this time, we are pleased to introduce our Assistant City Librarian, Susan Broman, for a special presentation. Susan.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Central Library. We are so thrilled to have you all here, and it is my great pleasure today to introduce to you the internationally acclaimed artist and Boyle Heights native, Gajin Fujita. To commemorate the Centennial, Gajin has created a remarkable painting titled 100 Years at Central Library, crafted with 12-karat white gold leaf, 24-karat gold leaf, spray paint, and paint marker on a 12x8 wood panel. The painting is both intricate and striking. Ta-da. We have the honor and privilege of celebrating Gajin Fujita's newest work, which you can see right here. Born and raised in Boyle Heights, Gajin's work, let's hear it for Boyle Heights. Gajin's work reflects both his deep reverence for Japanese culture and his pride as a native Angelino, also his love for the Dodgers. His paintings blend graffiti, traditional iconography, and contemporary urban life in ways that have earned him international acclaim. His art has been exhibited at LACMA and L.A. Louvre, and museums and galleries in Germany, Switzerland, Greece, and Australia. Los Angeles Times art critic Christopher Knight wrote that Gajin Fujita's paintings are the most important 21st century iteration of graffiti's influence on art. Many of you may also remember that in 2019, Gajin designed the Los Angeles Public Library's limited edition library card. Right here. He also led art workshops for youth at many of our branches. On behalf of the Los Angeles Public Library, we are especially grateful that Gajin is generously donating this beautiful painting to the library, where it will be displayed and part of our shared story for generations to come. Gajin, thank you so much for this extraordinary gift. And thank you for helping us celebrate this milestone. Please join me in welcoming Gajin Fujita to say a few words.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's my honor to be here and to present this gift to the Central Library for its centennial celebration. I just want to quickly describe what I had painted with the 100 Years L.A. Central Library painting that I had made this year. It's the second iteration of the Golden Boy, Kintaro, which is a mythical and legendary figure and character that symbolizes bravery and strength. And like Susan had said, I had used Kintaro in the first, or the art library card in 2019. But in this iteration, with this gifted painting, Kintaro is raising his arm with a bat in his hand to kind of recollect and recreate the Freddie Freeman bat drop when in 2024. That was just a memorable moment, and it brought so much joy and a great burst of energy to our city. So I had to make Kintaro and recreate that bat drop. And sorry, I'm just a little nervous, but the rays and the stars that are in the painting, as you can see, kind of raising up to the 100 on top of the painting, symbolizes the light of learning, which is closely related to our libraries. Kintaro's carrying a book, a load of books as well. I kind of went old school, and I was watching a lot of Little Rascals, and they would carry their books instead of having backpacks. They would kind of rope their books, and I thought that was cool to bring back the old school book holding. Let me just talk to you about what the library has meant to me and my first experiences of the library. So my first experience came when I walked in. I was about 8 years old, and I walked into Stevenson Stevenson Branch Library in Boyle Heights. That's right. There I met the librarian Pearl Yonezawa. Right on. That's what's up. Who's a Japanese American like myself, and I immediately felt a sense of community, and I saw that the library was like a place of sanctity as well as a place of refuge from the hot, wild streets of Boyle Heights. The library for me was a place where I was able to lose myself in the books by authors like Mark Twain or the National Geographic comic books, and so on and so forth. And it was also a boundless bank of knowledge and a place for learning. It ultimately informed my young mind, and all this was very key to me in the years to come as I developed my career in the practice of fine arts. So here today, I am very honored to present a gift, not only from me, but from my family and friends, and the communities across our great city of Angels. This painting, 100 Years Los Angeles Central Library, which I hope is a small but bright reflection of our city, in commemorating this special centennial anniversary of our Los Angeles Central Library. Congratulations, and let's do another 100 years and beyond. Thank you. Okay.
Can you take it out?
Yeah.
thank you so much, Gajin. I just want to say, as City Librarian, thank you so much to Gajin Fujita. First, you are such a gift to the Los Angeles Public Library, not only for having this incredible gift, and we're so honored to receive it in celebration of our centennial, but the creation many years ago of that wonderful art card. It was a limited edition card. We printed 100,000 of them, and it remains the most popular special edition art card that we have ever issued at the LA Public Library. I still get asked if we have a special stash of them left over, but they were so unbelievably popular. And so many people came to get that card and then discovered all of the incredible resources that the LA Public Library has to offer. But you've also shared your time in workshops with young people, and you've just been an incredible ambassador for the library and sharing all of our services and your own library story, which is the most powerful of all. So thank you so much for that. I want to acknowledge Gajin's wife, Angela Fujita. Thank you so much for being here. And also Lisa Jan from LA Louvre Gallery, who represents Gajin and his incredible work. Thank you so much also. We have incredible bookmarks highlighting this incredible painting that Gajin has been so kind to donate today, and he will be signing these bookmarks at 2 o'clock in the Children's Courtyard just outside. Thank you all so much, and we'll look forward to our program, which will be beginning in just a few moments. Thank you.
Back in 2013, when we first heard that Susan Orlean was interested in writing a book about the Los Angeles Public Library, a lot of us were kind of confused, and we got to see her a lot here in the library. What could this best-selling author possibly have to say about us?
It turned out she had plenty to say about us. And in many ways, her 2018 publication, The Library Book, ended up being a love letter to Central Library and its staff and continues to capture the imagination of readers around the world. I know our Central Library docents remain very busy giving tours to people who have discovered Central Library because of Susan Orlean's words.
For the book release in 2018, we hosted a launch party here at Central Library, which included a conversation on this very stage between Susan Orlean and our City Librarian John F. Szabo. And we are now pleased to invite them both back to the Taper Auditorium to discuss the impact of the library book nearly 8 years after its publication.
So welcome, John and Susan.
Wow,
Good
thank
afternoon.
you.
Susan Orlean.
Okay, sorry. Yes,
Welcome to the
hi.
library.
Thank you. I've never been here before. It's all new to me.
Well, it's a big day.
I know.
There are a lot
This
of
is
people here.
amazing. Yeah, and it's exciting. And I'm telling you, it makes me so happy to see this huge turnout. It's, you know, people are constantly saying to me, this question comes up all the time, do we need libraries? Do people really care about libraries? And I think, you know, anyone who's been in a library in the last few years can say to you, yeah, people love libraries and they still really care about them. Seeing this turnout today, what a wonderful expression of that connection.
It is indeed. When you're creating traffic jams in downtown LA, it's due to the library's birthday, it's a good thing. At the front end, I just want to say that you and the library book have been such a gift to the Los Angeles Public Library and to public libraries all over the world. And just at the front of this program, I just want to say thank you and know that we're all indebted to you and very grateful.
Thank you. It's, I feel, you know, there is a way that a subject also gives to the writer, and the sort of gifts that I've been given, and in no small part, the wonderful people that I've met because of working on this book. It's been a real joy. I mean, while I was in the middle of writing it, I would say it was not a joy. I mean, anyone who has ever written will agree with me that there's misery involved in writing, but as far as the sort of sense of this having just been a gift, it is really very real.
Oh, that's beautiful. People tell me all the time, because we're so associated with the book, of course, that they just love the book. And my initial response is to say, thank you so much, as if I've written it or something. So I pass those compliments on to you. It has been almost 8 years. I can't believe it. It seems like just yesterday you were telling me, I have this idea and I know there's a book in here somewhere and I don't know what it is, but, and now the book is out and it's all over the world and book club discussions, and it's been incredible. And you are a library superstar now. I mean, you are an iconic library person. What's it been like? How's the journey been?
Well, I've been a kind of iconic figure in several different communities over my career. I am like the orchid maven. I'm the German Shepherd maven. And now I'm the library maven. And I have to say, each one has its unique pleasures. My continuing relationship to the library has been very special, partly because I live here. And so my relationship to the library and the Library Foundation has been, really richer because I live here and I've been able to participate. But also, I feel like in this world of sort of bad news and a kind of drumbeat of negative kind of, the cover story in the Atlantic this month is that reading is over, nobody reads anymore. There is something that's meant a lot to me to kind of push against that and to say there's another story. But I've also been involved with the library in a quieter way. I've suspended it right now, but for a couple of years was tutoring at the Studio City Library and having, the wonderful experience of doing that, which I have to tell you, the great secret of volunteering is that you get as much out of it as the people who are there for your services do. I enjoyed it so much. So, I felt like I've stayed engaged in the library in a way that's been like part of my everyday life. And to be able to kind of give any service to it makes me feel great.
Well, thank you for volunteering. And speaking of volunteering, I know we have a number of docents probably in the room who regularly are giving tours of this building and mentioning your name undoubtedly. And by the way, thank you, because after the book came out, tours of Central Library skyrocketed. The number of docent tours just went up. So thank you to all of our docents in the room. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
When people talk about your work, they often talk about how you find extraordinary stories in unexpected places. Now, knowing libraries, I think it's a very expected place to find amazing stories and fascinating people. But can you kind of talk about, and I remember those early conversations you and I had, as you talked to people at the library, as you came to Library Foundation events, you learned a little bit more, you learned a little story about this and that, and you just kind of knew there was a book here somewhere, but you didn't quite know the form it would take, or can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I had this sort of, this is the nature of being a writer, is that you're always assessing the environment you're in and thinking, oh, this could be a story, this could be a book, this could be an article. I had taken my son to the library one day right after we had moved to L.A., and it gave me the most powerful sort of memory recall of going to the library with my mom. And it was so emotional and such a wonderful memory that I began thinking, you know, I've never read a book that captured the feeling of life in a library. And to be honest, I didn't know what it was like to be day after day in a library. And I knew that it was like a river, you know, of people passing through, of, you know, of the very large number of people who work in a library. And it just felt to me like this is the sort of observational story that I love doing. And I remember mentioning it to my editor, who said, sounds a little boring. And I thought, okay, I guess when you say library, people don't go, oh my God, that's the most exciting idea I've ever heard. But I thought, but it's so exciting, it's so interesting. I mean, what could be more interesting, this place that has its doors open to the entirety of humanity, and also the long history of, you know, just about every big city library has been around for a long time. So you've got the entire sort of unfolding of our cultural and social history within the building itself. As I often like to point out to people, when libraries first began opening in this country, they were restricted to men only. And the most amusing fact is that children were not permitted in the library, which is so funny to us now, given that programming for children is such a huge part of what libraries do. Then it evolved a little. Children with a certain grade point average could come to the library, which is so funny. So anyway, to get back to this, you know, I knew that the story of the taking the daily pulse of a library, I knew was a great story, but I also knew that often a narrative needs an arc to propel it and to give people a sense of you start at one point and you're going to end at another point, as opposed to just a kind of steady line. But I thought, I don't know what that could be in a library. Well, lo and behold, I'm given a tour of Central Library by beloved Ken Brecker, who took me into the fiction section and took a big whiff of a book and said, oh, you can still smell the smoke in some of them. And I was new to L.A., so I knew very little about the history of this library. And that was my first time in Central. And I said, oh, they used to let people smoke in the library. And he was like, what? No, they didn't let people smoke in the library. Actually, they probably did back in the day, to be honest with you. I kind of picture men with cigars in the library. I have to look that up. But anyway, he said, oh, no, you know, the fire, the big fire. I was like, what? Wait, stop. Don't go. And he sort of dismissed it and said, oh, yeah, you know, the big fire closed the library for 7 years. And I went roaring home and thought, whatever this is, like, this is it. This is the narrative engine that will allow me to do that other book, which I truly want to do, which is the observational story of what is a library and what is it like day to day to be in the library. But with this very compelling mystery that, you know, really mattered, that was a huge factor, both the events leading up to the fire, where it was this close to this building being torn down, which is why I think this celebration is so special, because this building was really, really close to being torn down, and when the fire occurred. And, you know, I mean, the fire wasn't a good thing, but it kind of put on hold those conversations about tearing the building down. But also, as a writer, it gave me this great story to explore through which I could tell that other story of the library. So, you know, in many ways, it was a kind of perfect combination of this urgent story, which is who started this fire and why, and how did we as a city deal with it, plus, while I've got you here, let's take a look at the library.
And thank goodness you did that, and you did that so beautifully. And you once said, I think, the library book was a lot about pulling many different ingredients together from the pantry and figuring out what am I going to make. And of course, the fire proved that arc. But there are so many stories in this institution and so many characters and people with in all of your research. It's so wonderful. It was such a gift to all of us who just work here, in addition to all of the people that didn't even know anything about LA Public Library.
Well, I'll tell you,
we're a fascinating lot.
Yes, and it was funny because at one point I thought, John Szabo, super interesting character, center of the book, and then I thought, I just wonder if there were ever any other interesting people who ran the library. And, like 2 years later, I was like, I'm still in Charles Lummis. I can't get out. And there was even a moment where I thought, maybe this should be a book about Charles Lummis, and let alone all the other. I mean, we've had some fascinating people run this library, and each of whom had an incredible story. I was partial to Charles Lummis because he's such a character, and he was only here for 5 years, but he was such an incredible figure, such an eccentric, such a dramatic character. But he was one of this pantheon, as you say, and each one of whom was so interesting and also represented an era in the library. Each one was very much a sort of avatar of their moment, whether it was Tessa,
Smoking Tessa Kelso.
Yeah, shelving a book that was a little risque and getting in trouble for that. Each one really moved the story forward in a way that was quite unexpected. So they became characters that I hadn't anticipated folding into the book.
And I love Althea Warren, and sturdy Althea Warren, and corduroy wearing Charles Lummis. And as you tell the story of all of these city librarians and people who've worked here over the years, you're also talking about Los Angeles and the city. Yeah. And I found myself learning a lot and coming to know Los Angeles in those early years as well.
Well, to me, because I was new here, this was my way to learn about my new home. It was fascinating because, LA got its library rather late. Yes. I mean, San Francisco had a public library well before LA did. And this really was a frontier town. It was not a sophisticated city. It was not a particularly literate city. At some point, I found some crazy fact, which I won't be able to recall exactly, but it was an estimate of how many books existed in LA 120 years ago, and it was minimal. People moved out here, they didn't bring books. And also, private ownership of books was limited back then. Only wealthy people had books. So there just weren't a lot of books in LA. And there was not a kind of existing municipal fixation on literacy. It just wasn't a big part of the founding of the city. I mean, to be honest, we were still having slave auctions at the time the library was founded. This was Native American people who owed small debts, and they were auctioned off as indentured servants to people. It was slavery, basically. So that was still going on here at the time that we were trying to think, should we have a library? Why do we need a library? There was a big campaign to convince people in LA that we should have a library. People were not thoroughly persuaded that that was a necessity. So it really gave me a glimpse of the origins of Los Angeles in a way that, and then our embrace of the library and the way it became part of the city and part of the, we didn't have a permanent home for a long time. This was why this building was such a big deal, because the library first was over a pharmacy.
A saloon.
And it was, it
City
was
Hall.
really just like, did anybody have a space we could put the library? And then, it was in rental space. So building this building was a huge point of pride for the city, because LA was still trying to prove that it was an intelligent, educated city. So it gave me a real sense of what the city was all about. Then you fast forward to the time of the fire. And this is a little bit of a poignant thing, which is the company that really helped the city get through the fire was Arco. And they were a very civic-minded company. They donated enormous amounts of money to the library. They allowed the library temporarily to be headquartered in the Arco offices across the street, and now they're gone. And we don't have those big oil companies here anymore that were very involved in the city. And that was an era of Los Angeles that's now part of the past.
There is this theme of resiliency in the LA Public Library from those early days of renting space and working to get a building built, to the 60s when a lot of people were on board with demolishing the building.
Oh, yeah.
And then the fire, and then that tradition of sort of community support and philanthropy that's supported with the Save Our Books campaign and all. And the building itself in your book is a character in and of itself. And actually, in many respects, the fire becomes a character in the book as well, sort of this voracious jackal that is eating at the library on that fateful day in April of 1986. But can you talk about sort of the library as character in the book?
It really was a character. I became fascinated with the architect in part because there's a sort of tragic story, which is this was kind of the pinnacle of his career, and he actually died very young before the final plans were drawn. He designed the building, but he never did the working plans and saw the building built. So it was a very poignant story, but he brought to it a kind of love of books and a sense of making a building that was not, if you go to other big city libraries, they don't look like this. They look like sort of Grecian temples, the big grand entrance, and it's a very different look. And this, in a way, LA got a whimsical, truly unique building, which feels appropriate to the city. And the thing that I love that he really wanted was that you could read the building like a book. And every time I come down here, I'm so struck by that, by how much there is to read on the exterior and the interior of the building. And that was a very novel idea at the time. That just wasn't, certainly you had carving on buildings, but this was this idea of making this read like a book. So there was a wonderful story in the architecture itself. But, then the building went through its sort of frowsy years in the
Great way to describe it.
in the 70s, 60s and 70s, as it started getting a little aged.
A little worn.
And a little worn. And my favorite document that I came across in the archives here was, there was no air conditioning in the library, and it was blazing hot. And also the windows were small, and a lot of the windows had been wired shut because people used to take books off the shelf and then throw them out the window and then go pick them up outside, so they didn't have, and you know who did this the most? The studios. The movie studios didn't want to have to actually check the books out, so they would send people, say, look, we need a book about costumes from the, 1850s. So get one and just throw it out the window and then go get it, so we can keep it longer than it's actually allowed. So anyway, they began wiring the windows shut so people wouldn't do that. So you had this boiling hot building with 6-inch thick concrete walls and no windows. So the librarians were the ones who were really suffering, and they began keeping a chart in a notebook of what the temperature was in their departments. And I'm telling you, I put a lot of it in the book. It would be like 98 degrees in the fiction department, I'm dying. Or, it was like day after day, they would document how hot it was. So I'm not sure the librarians were against the idea of tearing the building down because they were miserable. And, that is one of the facts of the fire, is that it gave this reset that the building really needed. The biggest shock to me was the day the fire began. They were planning, but had not yet done so, to install fire doors, which weren't in the building. There was no fire suppression, and I shouldn't laugh. It was, there was no fire suppression in the building at all, even up to code. And, they were constantly being pestered by the fire department saying, you don't have fire doors, you don't have fire extinguishers. The wiring, if you plugged in a fan, the lights would all go off. Or, it had wiring from 1920, and it just wasn't sufficient. So the building's age, look, I feel it, I thought, I know how that feels. My wiring isn't that good anymore. So seeing the building age in this very kind of concrete way, and realizing that buildings have lives, they really do. They are animated by us. They're designed by humans. They exist because of the human energy in them, and this building absolutely was that case. And I think when the building burned, people realized, we love this building. This is part of the history of LA that is, we don't have as much of it left because there was no architectural preservation organization in LA at that time, none. And it was because of this building being threatened with being torn down, where a number of architects ganged up together and said, we've got to make people understand this is part of the legacy of the city, are these old buildings. And they eventually became the LA Conservancy, which is now the leading architectural preservation group in the city. The first, and, but back then, we didn't see LA in terms of its past at all. Everything was just tear it down, build something new. And that was the ethos. And this building represented the first time we stopped and said, you know what, there's value in our past, and our historical legacy is something we should preserve. That was an awakening for the city of LA.
We love our connection with LA Conservancy and are really proud of it. I think they're here today, actually, in the gardens. It's wonderful. And documenting those temperatures and recording all of that is such a librarian thing.
I know, it's so funny. And also,
of course they did.
You're right. It's like 98, I'm miserable. 97, my shirt is stuck to my back. It's like very detailed, indexed. You can cross-reference it. it's very funny.
And I love that you included in the book, too. Talking about Goodhue and how he did pass, and Carlton Winslow, who then picked up and did the drawings and saw the project to completion. In January, we opened the time capsule that is in the cornerstone, and of course found another time capsule in there as well from 1881 from the normal school. But in that time capsule, we found an original document that they put there from Carlton Winslow talking at length about the building and the process of completing it, which we never had before, which is a
so
real
amazing.
Too bad we didn't have it when you were writing.
I know. And really the building of this building became, fascinating to me, and it really was a radical approach, which now, of course, you don't look at it and think, wow, this is a radical building, but it was.
It's such an L.A. building, too.
Yeah. You know what I love, too? Goodhue had flown in an airplane soon, little bit before he began designing this building, and he had this sort of revelation of what the world looked like from above. Now, first of all, it kind of blew my mind to think until people were able to fly, we had no idea of what, like farm fields from above, or any sense of life from above. And it became very important to him to build the building in this sort of cross formation, which is very much part of it, as if you were also seeing it from above. And it's such a changeful time in history where people were beginning to see themselves differently. And then also, I had the great pleasure of getting to know Norman Pfeiffer, who did the addition and was here the day of the fire. Yes. And loved this building and contributed an enormous amount to the fact that we are able to be here today, because we needed a bigger building, and he figured out an elegant way to do it while completely preserving the original building.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Norman, and his wife and family are here today. So it's really special to have them here.
Yeah, that's great. And he built many, many important buildings. He had an illustrious career. I think this building really meant a lot to him, and he was really proud of it.
And we are too. Harry Peak, the vivid picture that you painted from so much research, and we learned a lot about Santa Fe Springs and Harry Peak's family, and you mentioned once that you came to know him so well that when you came across his funeral announcement, you broke down and cried. And just reading the book, I think all of us as readers found ourselves hungry for more information about Harry Peak, but you were able to piece together an incredible story and a picture of him. Can you talk about that?
Well, this was a challenge for reporting, because when I began working on the book, I assumed I'd be able to talk to him. And that seemed to me a very natural part of what my reporting would entail. And I discovered quickly that he had passed away. So I was in a position now of having this major protagonist in the book. I would have to sort of come to know him only through newspaper articles and conversations with his family and court proceedings and talking to friends. And I was lucky because I was able to find enough people to talk to me about him. At the same time, Harry remained a bit of a cipher, a bit of a mystery. I came to feel pretty certain that he hadn't started the fire, But you keep coming back to this idea of why would he be going around telling people he had done it, except that he was a guy who loved being the center of attention. And, you know, there were ways in which he personified LA, you know, the attention economy that is what LA is all about, is about being the star of your own story. And he loved that. I think that he had this compulsion to always place himself at the center of any event. Like, if there were an earthquake, he would have been the one to say, oh my God, I was, you know, where the I-10 fell on La Cienega. Yeah, I was right there. I was this close to being crushed. He was that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So people are like, oh my God, did you hear the library burn? Yeah, I started that. You know, and you think, Harry, not a good idea to like say that. But he even said it to the arson investigators. And then, you know, so part of me wanted to figure out who was this guy who his desire for attention overrode any common sense, any, you know, normal, logical, like, I don't want to get in trouble kind of, which is what I think controls most people's behavior, which is, I don't want to get in trouble. He was the opposite, which is, I want to be the center of attention, whether it's trouble or not. And his story was, you know, he was a wannabe actor, a guy who sort of failed at everything, and yet everybody liked him. He was an enormously likable guy who drove everyone crazy. You know, everybody was like, oh my God, Harry. And yet they were also like, Harry, you know, you kind of couldn't help but love him, but he was the guy who would borrow your car and then leave it somewhere and forget where it was and lose the key and use all the gas. And, you know, so he was a sort of vexatious figure, yet not an evil figure, which is why I fall on the side of believing he didn't do it. Because for all of his being maddening and annoying and, you know, a pain in the ass, there was nothing that ever made me think he was an evil person. And I do think it's evil to start a fire in a library. I mean, that's a like, there's really no good that you can bring to that act. It's destructive, it's antisocial, and it's pointless, which is weirdly, you know, most arsons are for financial gain. And at least you can see the logic. Burning a library is just willful vandalism that nobody gets anything out of it. So there's something particularly antisocial about it. So, you know, figuring him out became a great mystery, and I began to feel that I understood this yearning kid growing up outside LA, dreaming of being a star, you know, being exposed to the glamour that Los Angeles has, but not quite being able to grasp it. One of the most poignant things I learned was here he wanted to be a star. He wanted to be a movie star. And what does he discover? He has terrible stage fright. And, you know, in a way it was so sort of heartbreaking. He goes to his first audition and he's petrified. So this thing that he wanted, that he felt was this sort of whole point of his existence, was something he couldn't even achieve. And then his story became absolutely poignant because, you know, he was gay at a time where being out was not widely accepted. His family, you know, refused to acknowledge that he was gay. And he was an early victim of AIDS when, first of all, there was, you know, not the medicine that we have now that can manage AIDS. And secondly, there wasn't a lot of sympathy or understanding of the disease. So that, to me, was hugely tragic. And He got a small settlement from the city for his arrest, and minor. It was something like $30,000, which really was nothing. And he died soon after, and his death was, in a way, a kind of absolute embodiment of what was going on in that moment in time in Los Angeles, too. I mean, you had lots of people who had been exposed to HIV and not yet any sort of comfort level with it or medication available for it.
You begin, and you talk in the book about Shaker Heights and your own library experience and your mother, and I know you lost your mother during the writing of this book. What would she say about this wonderful gift that you've given to libraries and you being a library superstar? I think she would be incredibly proud and thrilled.
She would have, as I said in the book, my mom absolutely loved libraries. To her, they were just magical places. And she would say to me often, very wistfully, that if she could have done anything in the world, she would have been a librarian. She just looked at the library as having an enchanted quality, in that librarians were the smartest people, they knew everything, they were the nicest people. I mean, she just held it in a regard that was really wonderful and obviously affected me. And my mom, to her credit, was my greatest champion, whether I was writing the tiniest story for the most obscure magazine or, writing something that got a lot of attention. This would have been the most special to her, without a doubt. This would have been the closest to her heart.
That's beautiful. Christina, do we have a time for some questions? Oh, wonderful, fantastic. All right, up for some questions?
Fantastic, yeah.
All right. Do we have any questions for Susan?
Only easy ones, please.
Yes.
It's early. It's not early, but should I, do we want to have the mic?
Yeah.
Because
She's got a mic.
there's someone right here.
We have someone right here.
Coming, hold on.
Great, thank you.
Step it up, come on.
Girl, I've been here all morning.
I would hate to be the
Hand to hand
runner
again?
with the mic.
Where's the hand?
Right here.
Okay, here you go, sir. Can you stand? I've been told I have to hold it too.
Same time? Oh, okay, okay. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for still being here. Libraries have always been very important for me. And I'm just wondering, Susan, I moved here just before you did. You must have come across, I mean, it happened in the same decade, the fire at Hollywood. The Hollywood Branch Library, which, I mean, I used to live there. Yeah,
yes.
and just that to me was just, wow, like the
Well,
loss.
that, if I'm not mistaken, that whole building went down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was very near, I mean, in time, it was, I forget what year, but these were very close in time, and I don't remember what the cause of that was. But yeah, that building was a total loss. It's, one of the things that was very chilling to me was discovering throughout history how many libraries have gone down in fire. And the big shock was finding this UNESCO report that's about this thick of the world libraries destroyed, and it's 90% fire. And part of it was war. During World War II, we lost most of the libraries in Europe. And they're targets, but also they burn easily. But here's what this is, like, funny, but not so funny, but still kind of funny, which is, the return drop-off boxes for books, the after-hour return slot used to be attached to the building, right? And you just come and drop the book in. People would drop lit cigarettes down them. Apparently, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, thinking it was a waste bin, and start fires. And so that's why they're not attached to the buildings anymore. They're separate from the building because there were a number of fires that started that way, through complete carelessness. But, libraries, they're the trickiest sorts of buildings to protect from fire because everything in them is flammable. But sprinkler systems were looked at as being as problematic as fires because if they were triggered accidentally, water is in a way more damaging to books, or at least as damaging as fire. So, because you think, well, why not have a sprinkler system? Well, because it would ruin the books anyway. So they are tricky places to protect. And I think sprinkler systems are more sophisticated now, but it's never been easy to, and also it's a place where the doors are open to anybody. People can come and go at will, which means maybe people who are careless or have bad intentions can come in.
Another
we have
question?
a question here and there.
Hi, this question is actually for John. I was just so curious what you all felt about a book being written about you all, because it's so about the librarians and the library. Like, did you have any hesitations? Were you nervous about being profiled?
That's a great question. Yes. And I remember when Susan came, this amazing writer, this journalist, incredibly talented writer wants to write a book about the library. Sure, I was nervous, and she needed access. And I made a decision to say, go to the loading dock and talk to the staff there, talk to security, talk to everyone. And I was very nervous. And we would check in. You shadowed me for a day. We checked in with each other. And there was a healthy amount of nervousness up until the end. And of course, what the result was just this, as I mentioned earlier, this really incredible gift and something really beautiful and wonderful that we all love here at the LA Public Library. But sure.
I will say two things that I think are worth noting, and that is the access and the fact that nobody ever made me feel that they were going to say, we need to see this before it's published, or that we have any restriction was really great. The other thing is that I began the book thinking I would be done in 2 years. And on year 7, I thought, no one has ever said to me, are you ever going to do that book? Like, nobody ever gave me a hard time and said, you're still here? Oh my God, I thought this book was going to be done years ago. And, my own self-consciousness was bad enough that it was taking me so long. But it was a really great working relationship that it's tricky, when you're so close to an institution. And obviously, there are things the library would or wouldn't want included, and there was never any interference at all, which I really appreciated.
Thank you. And maybe one more.
Oh, there's some, can we do 2 more, and we'll do the folks in the top row.
One of my favorite things in a book which is filled with favorite things is your use of, I believe it was a Senegalese expression, that when a person dies, they say their library has been burned. And I know in Judaism, for example, the Kaddish, the memorial prayer that you say, is the same prayer that you say when you complete a study of a portion of Torah. So I just wondered where that came about and how you discovered it's such a powerful metaphor. Comparing libraries to people?
Yeah, it became the thematic center of the book for me. Absolutely, 100%. It was what the book was about. I don't remember how I came across this expression. It popped up on my computer. I don't remember what I was looking for or how it came up. And I wrote it on an index card and I hung it over my computer because I thought, I don't understand it, but I like it, and let me sort of meditate on it. And, you know, when you're writing a book, or for me, it's always really important to have a deep theme that informs all of the choices in the book, that is always there as why I'm writing the book and what the point is that I'm going towards. And as I say in the book, you know, completely unrelated to my reporting on the book, my mom was developing Alzheimer's and losing her memory. And, you know, all of this suddenly came together in a very powerful way, which was, it's like my mom's internal library of names and words and memories are going up in smoke. They're disappearing. And suddenly, this idea that we each are a library of our memories, the stories we know, the information we know, every experience we've ever had. And I began thinking, you know, that's even the way when you're trying to remember something, it's almost like you're running your finger over a bookshelf. Like it feels almost physically like that's how you're thinking, no, not that, not that. No, that's the memory. That's the name. That's the scenario I'm trying to recall. So suddenly that expression both felt like a macro and a micro. It was both about an individual that when someone dies, their entire internal library leaves this earth. But also when a community loses a library, the community loses this shared memory. And that became what the book was about to me, was how we are libraries and libraries are us, and that memory is that quality, that libraries are commitments to memory, and they have a memory that lives longer than any individual. They don't have our lifespan, they have, in theory, an eternal lifespan, and that felt like that's why we cry when the library burns, why we wouldn't necessarily feel emotional about City Hall burning or another municipal building. You know, I mean, you would think, oh, that's too bad, you know, the courthouse burned down, but you don't have that emotional feeling that we have about libraries.
And one more.
Yeah, one more up there.
Hi, so unfortunately I've never gotten the pleasure to read this book, and I'm very interested.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I have never gotten the pleasure to read this book, and was just wondering how, or 3 words you would use to describe this book, or is there anything you'd like someone who is going to read this book to know?
Oh, I think that's a tough one. I'm stumped. Well, first of all, it's true, which I think is important. I don't have the 3 words, but I think it is important to realize that, you know, as amazing as some of these stories are, this is a true story. And what's important to me as a writer is, you know, besides telling the story of the library, it's also an effort to say to people, look around you every day. There are amazing stories, true stories, stories that don't hit the headline, that aren't about celebrities, that aren't the stories we've become accustomed to thinking of as important, but instead the stories of our lives that turn out to be just as amazing. And, you know, part of what means so much to me that this book is in its like 30th printing is the realization that, wow, this completely refutes the idea that people only want to read about celebrities or only want to read about, you know, something rich and famous. This is a story about a place that we all own, that we all have access to, that feels very much part of our daily lives, and yet we really care about it and we want to read about it. And that, to me, is what's really important to convey to people.
And yes. And I have to say that all of us at the LA Public Library and in Library Land are so lucky that it was Susan Orlean who chose to write that book about libraries.
Thank you.
And you are now part of our story, and thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your gift.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you all so much.
But don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, John, and thank you, Susan. Thanks to all of you for attending our Once in a Century celebration. And you know, the library opened up, it was dedicated on July 15th, 1926, so that's why we're having this big birthday bash here in July. When you exit today, but don't exit yet, you're gonna exit out the regular entrance there, and we do have tote bags for you, because it's not a birthday party without gifts.
You've seen piñatas. You're taking your goodie bags, you got your posters, entertainment, joy. But as wonderful as this day has been, is it truly a birthday party without cake? Of course not, so let's bring out the cake.
if you will, please join us in singing happy birthday to our beloved Central Library. Okay. Are they going to play or are we just going to sing?
Yay! Well, at this time, we invite you to follow Mariachi Lindas Mexicanas, all-female band from Boyle Heights. Out to the Maguire Gardens for a performance and cupcakes. So follow the mariachi.
Thank you.